G'day, my name is Jerome Jacobs, author of the Business Mechanic book. Today, it's my privilege to be sharing with you the insights of the book and how I came out to write this book, why it is that I wrote this book, and more importantly, some of the gems along the 7 key areas to gain traction out of your business. Now, you might be in different places. Some of you might have had a good business journey at this particular stage, meaning that you've got everything well mapped out and well working in your business and you're happy to be in the maintenance process. Some of you might be starting out in business and probably some of the pitfalls that could come through here. And then also there might be some questions for awareness at this particular stage, thinking areas are not going well. It might be in the marketing, it might be the sales, there might be just a few key areas that you're looking to get some gems. And so no matter where you are today, I'm sure you're going to get a lot out of it. The book is based also on a few key clients that I've worked with over the years and some of the wins, successes they've had. Also, you'll probably see that there's an area within there with one specific client that I'll take you through and how he's put effort in these areas in order for him to gain traction in his business. Now, a little bit about me. I've been doing business mentoring and coaching for just coming up 10 years. And previously, I've always been involved in the mechanical industry, so I'm a mechanic by trade, and also owned mechanical business and transport businesses. I have a strong love for business, but I also know the challenges that it can give up. And so I woke up one day with this deep sense of actually providing more tools, and this is how the book has come across. Now, show of hands, who over here has a driver's license for their car? Fantastic, that's basically everyone. Now, the reality behind that, there's a few steps that we have to go through, and it takes about 2 years to actually gain the full driver's license, and there's a bunch of tests and competencies that you have to go through in order to get that. But in the business realm, it's slightly different. We allowed very cheaply and ineffectively can go online and start a business and then be handed this thing called a business driver's license. And sometimes I'm not too sure whether or not we have the right skills and talents to manage ourselves through the element of business. Love business, but it can be the most challenging thing. So let me start today by a gentleman by the name of Calvin Armstrong. And Calvin started his business 20 years ago. He's in the mechanical industry, very successful in his own right. Owns his business outright, also owns the property outright, owns his home outright. So basically a very comfortable position, business making good profits. And when I sat down with Calvin, I started out with the key questions. And I started in this party of taking stock. And I asked him the questions around that. Do you consider yourself to be the right driver behind the wheel of your business vehicle? And we had to review that quite significantly. And to a degree, yes, I would say yes. Perhaps not on the leadership, but definitely had skills, abilities in these other areas. And then I asked Calvin another question. I said, Calvin, can you tell me something? Do you think your business has the value in it, the right business model to take you from A to B successfully? And when will that be? And I suppose from a maintenance perspective, yes. But I could see that Calvin wanted more. He had a vision for more. And his vision was to have multiple sites. Now, strange enough, not too long ago, Calvin just bought his 3rd business in it. We've gone through the process of getting the 2nd one and the 3rd one. Certain things had to change for him as an owner in that business. Meaning he needed to have other skill sets. He needed to understand himself better, and he needed to leverage his business better. And so we had to go through a bunch of steps. In order for that to happen, we had to map out how we were going to go about this. What would happen over the next quarter? What would happen over the next 6 months? What's going to happen over the next year? And what was his rules going to be around buying another business? What's the intention of owning 3? How was that going to have to be set up? So he needed a different roadmap to get him to that next phase. Now, it's interestingly enough, most business owners that I do meet, I do ask them the question, show me what's going to happen over the next 3 months, or perhaps show me what it is that you're measuring right now, whether that be leads, financials, whatever that is in the business. And it's very interestingly enough that what they can't measure, they can't manage. So we need to put some structure in place to get all the measurements within his business. The key drivers, what makes it really work and what makes it hum. And who are the team members that's going to participate to get it there. Fantastic. So we took some stock over there, and within the book, you're more than welcome. There's elements over there to prove and to show what you can do. It's about looking at it in a way that makes sense for you in your business. in order for you to move forward and make sure you've got a good business vehicle, we need to make sure that the gauges and what the engine is telling us, the financial of the business is working. The engine is made up of multiple different parts. What I mean by that is there's parts by which it's working this way, and there's parts it's working that way. So there's multiple parts in an engine. Sometimes there could be up to 600-700 parts in an engine. Now, when I'm thinking about your business financials, I'm talking about your profit and loss, your balance sheet, your debtors, your creditors, how you measure your margins, terms of trade, hours rounding, cash flow, budget actuals, basically debtors management. There's a bunch of things that we've got to review within the business to make sure that it's working effectively. And some of the areas need to be measured on a daily basis, some on a weekly basis, and some monthly. It just depends on how your business is set up. Once again, we have an informed checklist to go through to make sure that you have these key areas working in your business. And it's like anything, if you're driving with a car down the road, if the engine is not finely tuned, it's going to take a lot of fuel, it's going to be underperformed, and really doesn't want to, it can really slow the journey down from A to B. So that's a really critical area to look at within any business. Fantastic. Now, I don't know, but I've bought a new car recently, and the fundamental part of buying a new car was getting something called an owner's manual, or a place where I could go and find out how things need to work. So perhaps a procedures manual in another way in a business. Now, funny enough that most people go and purchase franchises because they're going to buy this as a huge component and part of it. And you'd be surprised sometimes how many franchises, been involved in franchise for 7 years, are under-processed in the sense of the value of information that's in there. There's a saying that goes, humanize the exception, but 20% is it's the mundane task that needs to be over and over. And sometimes it's easy as videoing something, or specifically taking notes and having it written down can add so much value to a business. So once again, you look at what are the key areas within the company, and this adds a lot of equity and value to a business. It's the McDonald's of every business should have a McDonald's part to it, and this should be it. So once again, in the book, I'll encourage everyone to take the book away today and then have a look and see what are some of the checklists that you can go through. And if you feel that there's some doubling up happening, there's an opportunity to get some flow charts and things working so it can work effectively. We had to do a lot of this for Calvin because if he was going to duplicate his business or create multiple units, it needed to be systemized. Fantastic. Great tools for making that work. Now, I want to consider the sales and the marketing as the wheels of a vehicle. Now, I don't know about you, but when we have a flat tire, that's pretty uncomfortable for a car. It's going to use a lot of fuel, it's going to be slow, and it's going to be sluggish. Sometimes it's the same with sales. And the great thing about a business today is having sales processes. I'm very process driven when it comes to making sure, really making sure that the business has got sufficient value coming through it, sufficient sales to keep it sustainable for its growth. And sometimes when you go through a process of measuring a sales process, you get to see the little gems, the little spokes in the wheels. Each one of them creates opportunities for conversion. And every business is slightly different. Perhaps the lead time, perhaps the person that's behind it. And I think it's really good to know that, you know, when your wheels are turning in a good way, it's getting you once again from A to B. So, what is your sales process? What is the value that you have as a business owner or a team that you have that's doing sales? What are they doing? How do you measure that? And that's what comes out of the book too. Now, it's kind of interesting. When I'm on the road of business, I'm normally driving around. Now, I've come to understand different vehicles. When I'm driving on the road, I can see a Toyota badge. I know that's a Toyota. Or when I'm driving down the road and I see a Mercedes-Benz, hey, that's a Mercedes-Benz. And so too, the Rolls-Royce, Porsche, you name it. Right down to, you know, the Great Wall. They all have a badge. I can recognize it on the road. A company with good branding and it looks attractive, always maintains its margin, but not only that, people recognize it. And that was something we had to do with Calvin. We had to rebrand his business and make it look that extra bit attractive so that we could go for multiple units. But so that people also recognize it and say, well, I'm part of that business. I understand, I see them around. automatically that makes a significance around its signage and how it's communicating its value. I think businesses nowadays are pushing too much of their value on people, and the ownership is now in people, in the customer's hands. Business should actually start looking at how to become more attractive in the way it educates, the way it adds value to its clientele. And so the marketing is fundamental. In fact, a business that's not marketing today is basically dying. And I believe that we've got to look at it. There needs to be at least 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 or 5 significant activities that keeps it separately from word of mouth, separately from referrals, separately from good signage, separately from repeat customers. But sometimes businesses need that freshen up to gain the value of the equity of a vehicle. If it's tied in and looks messy, consider, they're probably not going to give you a good value for a trade-in when you want to sell it. Something to think about. So what are the things that we are measuring within your company as far as marketing is concerned? Now I've come to understand that either we are man in a van or we own a vehicle where we could say that we have several people within it. And that becomes quite a challenging process to lead and manage a company with several people in it. Whether it's a manufacturing business, trades that charge a quote, tender, professional services, brokerage businesses, retail. What I come to find at the end of the day is there's a significant cost involved in getting people on the bus. And the best thing to do is to take time and take stock and look at what is the clarity of the individuals, what is the process of bringing on people. Now, something that I've come to understand too, if a business don't look sexy enough, you probably don't get the people that's going to come, that's going to add value. It needs to really look good and it needs to be appealing so that you can attract really good people. And when you do go through the process, I believe there's a significant steps that needs to be implemented in order to take people through a process so that they can come and join your company. So in the book, there's actually quite an involved recruitment process that really locks in the key elements in order to getting great people. It makes the load much lighter when you have people participating in it versus, just becoming a passenger in the vehicle. And thus, the engine has to work harder and literally just sucks a lot of cash. So, really good time needs to be put in perspective in order for folks to go through this particular process. Really good information within the book too. But last not least, right, what I've come to understand is this key element over here of your service crew, your advisors. Like a race car going around and around on a track, it can do that for hours. But sometimes it's got to pull in, take other information and go back out and do it better. Going from A to B can sometimes be time and distance can be a daunting task for an owner driver or for an owner driving it. But sometimes to get there much quicker is getting the right advice at the right time. I do believe that every business owner needs to have several key quality advisors. I think they need to have a close relationship with their bank manager. In really understanding how they can work together to create a common outcome. But not only that too, a really good accountant. Not from a cost perspective, but from really honestly gaining the growth, the management growth that the business deserves, or the sales growth that the business deserves, and a good accountant that can meet up with at least quarterly to provide good insights into how the business is performing. This doesn't mean that the owner doesn't know at any given stage where the business is at. Don't get me wrong. But what I do believe is having good people, a good HR person that can help advise and say, well, these are the elements that we need to be taken care of. Because sometimes the skill sets are not there and we've got to import those skill sets. So we've got to review a whole bunch of these things. Going through this process with Calvin was quite significant because as you were going further and further on, there were different levels of advisors. His last business was taking on a Mitsubishi franchise. So that's at a corporate level. That's the next level that you want. You want to go up from the SMS to a corporate level. That's where you want to operate from. The value and the information that was going to come from there is so significant. It's going to add loads of value. Also with Calvin, went through this whole process of going through an awards process, so he was double checked on the outside to make sure he was doing these things right. And sometimes that's what it takes to get a successful business. At the end of the day, it's either going to be a business that you're going to sell at some stage,